5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let's go. Diary of a Kidney Warrior. Sharing faith, knowledge, hope, and love.
Hi and welcome to Diary of a Kidney Warrior podcast. My name is Dee Moore and I am a stage 4 kidney warrior. This podcast is dedicated to encourage, educate and inspire as we explore all aspects of kidney disease, chronic illnesses and health. If you have any questions or ideas for topics you would like me to cover, please get in contact with me on social media using the handle Diary of a Kidney Warrior. Today's episode is the first part of a 2-part interview with Jan Shorrock. Jan is the Executive Officer at Give a Kidney Charity, and in today's episode shares her story of donating her kidney to a stranger. Hi and welcome to Diary of a Kidney Warrior, the podcast. How are you doing today, Jan?
I'm well, thank you, Dee. How are you?
I'm good, It's wonderful to have you here today. Today we're talking about non-directed kidney donation.
That's right.
And when I say that, I'm just to be honest with you, I am filled with awe because I just couldn't imagine I don't even know how to even start by saying, I don't know how someone actually gets to the point where they are willing to give such a precious gift to someone. I mean, we're not talking about, and I don't mean to be flippant here, but we're not talking about giving somebody a cup of sugar or lending somebody your favorite CD or favorite outfit. We're talking about ultimately giving somebody the gift of life, sharing a precious part of yourself with a complete stranger. And the expression that comes to me when I think of this is the expression that says, not all heroes wear capes. And to me, it takes a special type of person to make that decision to help someone else. And so I just want to start by saying, I think that you're amazing. Like, you are an absolutely amazing person. And I just wanted to do this interview today to give you the opportunity to share your story and just to kind of get into the mind of somebody that is just so amazing and why you came to this decision. So the first thing I want to say is you're amazing and thank you for your gift. And yes, how did this come about for you? Tell me your story.
Okay, thank you. That's quite humbling to hear you say. I don't feel amazing. I feel just like that I've offered something as other people offer any kind of charitable donation. Lots and lots of people give blood, and it's a very similar concept, really. I agree. It kind of takes it to the next level, but it is, the idea of, how fortunate some people are to have something, to be blessed with something, and other people are not so fortunate. So for me, it feels like, gosh, I'm really, really lucky actually to have been privileged enough to be able to offer, a kidney to somebody who needed one. How wonderful is that? So, thank you. I don't feel, it just feels like, to me, it feels like a resource that I have that someone else needed. So for me, it was a kind of no-brainer in lots of ways. So how did it begin? I suppose I remember very vividly the day I think the seed was planted in my head. I was driving up the M6 to where I was working at the time, and I was listening to the radio, and there was a lady on the radio talking about having donated a kidney to somebody, a stranger on the waiting list, and it just resonated immediately. I mean, as soon as I heard it, I thought, oh, I could do that. That's something I could do. And she was very much talking about the same ethos, really, that, if we have something that somebody else needs and someone else is suffering because they don't have it and we don't need it, if surely most people you would think would want to help. So I think the seed was kind of planted in my head from that point, and I didn't really do anything about it at that point, but it was kind of in the background of maybe that's something I could look into at some point. So then, kind of some time later, maybe a year or so later, when kind of work was a bit less busy and I had a bit more space in my head, I kind of started exploring it a little bit and just researching kind of how you went about doing, is this something that a lot of people do? How do you do? Where do you even begin? And it was really funny because as I started to do it, as I started to kind of read about it, it felt like almost everywhere I went, somebody was talking to me about kidney disease, or somebody was talking to me about organ donation or blood, so it kind of really felt like, okay, I think, this is probably the time that I should be doing this. So, I started looking at, websites and looking at the NHS website and the Give a Kidney website, and eventually kind of plucked up the courage to pick up the phone to one of the transplant units to say, I'm interested in doing this. And this is this is going back some years now, when this was probably not as common as it is now, I think. So, it took me a little while to get through to the right person or to find out who was the right person to talk to. And then I got through to the coordinator at kind of my relatively local hospital, which is one of the referring units into a transplant centre. And she said, I'm going to send you some information, but it sounds like you've already done some research, but read the information. If you're still interested, give me a ring and we'll make an appointment for you to come in. So that was one of the living donor coordinators in Preston, which is I live in the northwest. So that was my kind of local assessment centre. So and then I just kind of rocked up for a initial meeting, and she talked me through the process, and she kind of took some information about my medical history and health, and that first question of why do you want to do this, and I think on that day, she said to me on that day, it looks like you've done the research, you've already made your mind up, haven't you? And I said, I have. So we started the assessment process that day. So I left, she did some bloods and did that first initial screening to rule out any kind of kidney disease first and foremost. And then it went from there.
So didn't you have any concerns whatsoever for your own health and safety? I mean, a lot of people that I've spoken to, their concern when it comes to being a living donor is if I donate a kidney, then my health is going to be affected and my health is going to go down. So wasn't that ever a concern for you?
I think it was something I thought about. I knew from the research that I'd done that actually donating a kidney, you have this kind of full MOT essentially. So they put you have everything tested pretty much to check that you're well enough and healthy enough to do this. And they were really clear about that. From day one, they said, there's a chance that you won't be found to be well enough or healthy enough, or something might come up that we didn't expect that will rule you out, because they were very clear and are very clear about wanting to keep donors. Of course, as they don't want a donor then to become a patient. They want to keep you as safe as possible. So I knew there were some risks. Of course, it's surgery, and every surgery carries a risk, and it is major. There's no getting away from it. It's major surgery, but I knew what the risks were. I knew they were relatively low for me in comparison to the benefit that somebody else would get if this kidney were to go to someone in need, and it worked. So it felt like, I was driving up the M6 every day. There's a risk in that. As soon as I get in my car and drive onto a road, there's a risk. So it felt like there was a risk, but it was a kind of measured risk, I guess. And I also knew I was fit and healthy. And the other thing that went through me, and it's coming back now, was that sense of, well, do you know what? If the doctors had said to me, you've got cancer of the kidney, we need to take this kidney out, I wouldn't be hesitating. You know, I would just be going, great, take the kidney out. And it's the same operation, essentially, but I'm fit and healthy. So for me, it kind of felt like, well, that really makes sense. And the benefit seemed to outweigh any potential risk to me. Yeah.
A lot of people who do living donation actually do so for a family member or a friend or somebody they know or they're close to. But in your case, your kidney actually, from the onset, you knew that it was going to go to a complete stranger. So why? Like, I don't know how to ask the question any other way, but, you know, a complete stranger, somebody you don't know. So, you know, why would you do that?
Well, I guess firstly, there was no one in my family who needed it. So, of course, had there been, that might have made the decision very different. But I think, well, partly that was an incentive as well. I think, you know, I don't have any history of kidney disease in my family. No, you know, the likelihood of somebody in my immediate family becoming unwell with kidney disease was slim. So for me, you know, a lot of people ask this question. So, you know, I'd all say to me, you know, I'd have done it for a friend or a family member. That would feel comfortable for me because, you know, they're my loved one. But why a stranger? You don't know who it's going to. And I think for me, and I hear other non-directed donors say the same thing, that distinction between my family and someone else's family, I think it feels different somehow. Like, to me, it didn't really matter that it was not my daughter, mum, dad, brother, cousin, because it's somebody's daughter, mum, dad, brother, cousin. And if it were mine, I would want somebody to step forward and help. Just simple as that. If I needed a kidney, I would want there to be one. I would want somebody to be offering one if they had two and had two healthy ones. It just seemed like the right thing to do somehow. So it didn't matter that it was, because everybody on that waiting list, well, as you know, everybody on that waiting list needs a kidney. You know, these are people that actually do need a kidney. These are not hypothetical, in 10 years somebody might. These are people who need a kidney, and there are just not enough donors. There are not enough donors coming forward, or even deceased donors, to take those people off the waiting list and give them the opportunity of regaining their health. I mean, what a wonderful thing to be able to potentially offer somebody.
Wow. So how was the actual process, though, from the first time you went in and you had the initial assessments? And obviously I know that you have blood tests and other type of tests. So how was the actual process? How did the surgery go? I mean, how long did it take you to recover? Sorry that I've asked you loads within that, haven't I?
That's okay. That's okay. So the process is quite lengthy. I think any donor will tell you that. Most donors say that, although it's gotten a bit quicker now. But so there's a series of assessments usually. So blood tests, urine tests. Some people have ECGs. There are scans on your kidneys and different things to test how effective and efficient your kidneys are. All sorts of tests that are kind of, now there's a kind of standardized set of tests that everybody goes through that are professionally created, and everybody goes through the same process. There's also a kind of a psychological assessment, a mental health assessment, just to make sure that you kind of understand what you're doing and understand what the risks are, and just to check your motivations and how it might be for you if the kidney didn't work, or if you didn't hear from that person. And so there's a lot that there's a lot of showing up to appointments and having things done to your body at various times. And then for me, my surgery was in Manchester, because that's the nearest transplanting unit to me. So of course I didn't really know anybody there. I'd gone through a team in Preston, where my coordinator was. So it was kind of a bit strange going into a hospital that was essentially relatively new to me. But I had met the surgeon there and I had met the coordinator there, so I kind of knew what to expect. And it was okay. It's a few years on now, so I wonder if it's faded a little bit, but it was okay. I mean, it was, nobody likes going into hospital, I don't think, and it's not a pleasant place to be. But I was well looked after, and I think I went in on a Wednesday night, because I was kind of the first person down the following morning. It was all a bit surreal because, of course, when we go into hospital, usually we're going in because we're unwell. But I was going in kind of as fit and healthy as I've ever been, really. So a bit strange kind of getting into a hospital bed and putting your pajamas on and, having you've been fitted up for a drip and to kind of hydrate your body. And yeah, it felt a bit bizarre, really. I felt a bit like a fraud. And then surgery was the following morning. And I think it took about 3 or 4 hours. And then they obviously whipped my kidney off to its recipient, who was in a different hospital somewhere else in the country. So yeah, obviously I just went to sleep and woke up and it was done. And my pain was managed well. I wasn't in a great deal of pain, but I did feel really nauseous. I think as a result of the painkillers. And I really struggled with that because I really don't like the feeling of I'd rather be in pain than feel sick. That was really unpleasant. So I think eventually, over that day, kind of I was taken off. I tried different medications and eventually just onto paracetamol. At my request, because I just didn't want the nausea. And very, tender and a bit sore and a bit out of it from the anaesthetic. But no different to anyone who'd be having that surgery because they need it. That's kind of that you do that, don't you? You go through that process for the benefit. And I think, a couple of days of feeling pretty rough, if I'm honest. And a bit uncomfortable, but not too bad. I've got nothing really to compare it to because that's my only major surgery, so I can't really say, well, it felt a bit like this or, it felt like that. But it was manageable and my pain was managed, and I was home, 3 days later, Sunday. So the operation was the Thursday, and I came home on the Sunday. And mostly just really, and I'm sure anyone who's had an anaesthetic will know, but they're just wiped out, really, just really tired, because all your energy is going into healing. And I've heard people say actually the donor can feel a bit worse because obviously they've lost something and the recipient actually gains something and starts to feel better, whereas the donor feels worse for a few days. But I was back at work in 6 weeks, and now I barely think of, I've got a couple of little scars, but I mean, I barely think about it unless I'm kind of talking to somebody like you, and in a situation like this, it's my life, nothing's changed. I carry on my life as normal, and I'm fit and well and healthy, and no long-term effects. I'm checked every year. I get a kind of assessment every year just to make sure. So they keep an extra eye on that remaining kidney just to flag up any issues as early as possible. But so far, so good.
That is truly incredible. Something that I didn't actually mention before, but I think that needs to be said, is that this donation, you're not getting any money for it whatsoever. You're doing it absolutely free of charge and from out of the goodness of your own heart. And I think that needs to be mentioned as well, because unfortunately, would you believe I have had I don't even know how they got my number, but I've had messages on WhatsApp. I've been inboxed on social media people actually offering to sell me a kidney. And to say that I was disgusted, I don't think that there's even a word in the English language that could describe how I felt about that somebody out there is preying on people's situations. I don't even know how to express how disgusted I was to get that message, and no doubt I blocked those individuals. But I think it just needs to be said that when, as a non-directed donor, you are doing so free of charge. And you said that the recovery, it took about 6 weeks as well. So to not receive any payment and to take 6 weeks to recover, that is a massive sacrifice on your part. That is just as I started at the beginning of this interview, not all heroes wear capes. And to say that you're doing something for free out of the goodness of your heart and sacrificing so much of your own life to give a gift to someone else, again, why did you come, why were you willing to do it for free, and to sacrifice so much?
Yeah, I think, in other countries, I think there is a, legal or otherwise, I think often illegal kind of trade of organs, which is, as you said, it's kind of hard to even comprehend, isn't it? And people's desperation to sell as well. I kind of think, gosh, what must that person be? They must be in a terrible state to kind of be trying to sell one of their organs. It just kind of baffles me. But really sad, actually, and sad that you've been approached in that way. And as you said, kind of preying on people's vulnerability in lots of ways. So it's illegal in the UK to receive any kind of financial incentive or any kind of incentive or reward. So there's a really clear law, and part of the assessment process is a meeting with the Human Tissue Authority, and their job is to make sure that the donation is being carried out to the law. So one of the questions they ask is about, are you receiving any payment? Are you being coerced? Have you been promised anything in return? I mean, obviously with this kind of anonymous donation, that makes that much simpler because I don't know who the recipient is, so they can't coerce me and they can't pay me. And of course, that's, that wouldn't be what anybody would want. But there is an expenses program. So this is really important for people, I think, who are thinking about it, because I did have to take 6 weeks off work, and I couldn't afford to do that at the time. If I couldn't just afford to take 6 weeks unpaid leave, and a lot of people couldn't, wouldn't. So there was a clear expenses policy that the NHS Blood and Transplant have created that essentially covers any legitimate expenses, so expenses for travel to all your assessments, and expenses for loss of earnings, which have to be kind of proven. So they'd want to see pay slips and they'd need a letter from your employer. So there is a system to make sure that, or the theory is that the donor shouldn't be negatively financially impacted. So they shouldn't lose their earnings for 6 weeks or however long they take to recover, that the NHS should reimburse that. It's a bit of a kind of clumsy process and a bit of a clunky process at times with all the evidencing of it, but it is really important, because I couldn't have financially, I couldn't have done it otherwise. And I was really reassured that was there to kind of, fill that gap. But yeah, of course, not making any profit, as it were, but not being negatively impacted either. So that's a national scheme. So anyone who's thinking about donating can talk to their coordinator about what they'd be entitled to under that, and it's very clear which expenses are coverable.
I know it's anonymous, but do you actually get any information whatsoever about the person that you're donating to?
So it varies. I think some people want to know, some people don't want to know. So there are bits of information you can be told. I was told that the kidney had worked. So my surgeon had spoken to the surgeon who'd implanted the kidney into the recipient, and he came to see me while I was in the hospital, which was so lovely to hear. And he said, I've spoken to the surgeon. It was a beautiful kidney, and it started working straight away, which is a really good indicator of success. So that was really lovely. I mean, that was kind of a real high point in that kind of time when you're feeling pretty grotty and recovering. So to hear that it had gone well, and that was really important for me to know that it had worked. And then really with non-directed kind of anonymous donations, the kind of protocol is that it's kept absolutely anonymous until the point of donation and receipt, and then it's kind of up to the recipient to decide whether they want to make contact with the donor. So the donors I think this is still the same, the donors are kind of counselled that they may never hear, you may never know, the likelihood is you won't hear from the recipient. And I was kind of really comfortable with that. I didn't need to or want to particularly, until I got a letter from the recipient. And then I was so glad to have heard, and it was quite a long time after the donation, more than a year. But really, yeah, very brief information. It was kind of, I know the person's first name, I know her age, her gender, obviously, and a little bit about, what she told me about her life in that kind of one letter. So I'd kind of assumed I never would hear. I was quite comfortable with never hearing, but when I did hear, it really made me emotional to receive that. I think particularly after such a long time, actually, to know it was still working and that it had done what I wanted it to do, which was, give someone a chance of getting their life back, getting, off dialysis or preventing them having been on dialysis even, and being out in the world and living as full a life as I'm able to, so I feel emotional now talking about it, but it really didn't expect to hear, and I was very, very grateful that I did.
Wow, that's so amazing to know that your gift has helped somebody change their life and save their life. That's just so amazing. So what would you say to someone who's thinking about living donation and becoming a living donor?
I think I'd say, for me, hands down, it's one of the best things, most useful things I've ever done in my life. And I feel really proud that I was able to and still carry it with me as I'm glad I did that, really glad I did that. And I hear that from an awful lot of people, whatever their experience has been. I think most people are glad that they've done it. And I think it's a really personal choice. It's not for everybody. And I think you've got to be comfortable with the risk benefit equation. You've got to be comfortable that the potential benefit for that recipient, whether that's someone you know and love or whether it's a stranger, is enough for you to kind of outweigh the risks. I would say really do your research, understand what the risks are, talk to other donors if you can to get a sense of what it was like for them, because this is just my experience. And really think about it. I think people know, I think my sense is people know if this is something they can do or not. I think people have an instinct as to, okay, yes, I'd be willing to do this, or just no, I wouldn't. And I think that falls on a spectrum. I think there are people who would be willing to do this for their child, parent, partner, but not for a stranger. And there are people who are willing to just recognise that all of those people are somebody's partner, parent, child, and but where you are on that spectrum is your choice, because it's your body and it's your life. And yeah, so how you want to live it is up to you. But I would say look into it, do your research. If you can't be a living donor, or I don't feel that that's for you, I would absolutely urge you to sign the organ donor register to become a deceased donor, if you can do that, or donate blood. All those things really matter as well. So, we all give in the way that we give. You might donate to charity, you might give blood, you might do voluntary work. It's another way of giving back to the world, and everyone finds their own language for that. So yeah, but don't discount it. I would say have a think. Yeah, and if it resonates for you, then do talk to other people, have a read, contact Give a Kidney, the charity, if you're interested in finding out more.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing your story with me today, and for just being such an amazing person. I just can't say that enough. Thank you so much for all that you've done. And my final question is, if anyone wants to contact you online, how can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, the easiest way is through Give a Kidney. So it's www.giveakidney.org. That's got all our contact information on. If you just make sure it's you say if it's an email or on our Facebook page or Twitter, just a message for Jan, and I'd be really happy to hear from people and talk to them and find out what their concerns or interests are. Absolutely. So thank you for inviting me here today and allowing me to share my story.
Thank you for listening to Diary of a Kidney Warrior podcast. And don't forget that you can contact me on social media using the handle Diary of a Kidney Warrior. Please do subscribe to the podcast, and please do tell a friend. New episodes of this podcast are released every Monday. Until next time, take care and choose to live.
Diary of a Kidney Warrior, sharing faith, knowledge, hope, and love.